Joan Esposito. Live, local, and progressive on WCPT 820.
Opal Vadhan is here. She is, or once was, a senior advisor to Vice President Kamala Harris. She was an aide to Secretary Hillary Rodham Clinton, and long ago she was a White House intern. And she is one of the people who has been in the room where it happens, and we are very, very pleased to welcome her to our airwaves. Opal, thanks for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Joan. I'm so thrilled to be with you.
I want you to talk about women in positions of power. I had a discussion yesterday with former Illinois Congressman Joe Walsh, and I told him that I thought, as a country right now, we were too misogynistic to elect a woman to be president of the United States. Not that there isn't a number of women who would be great presidents, but just that there is so much of this country that is still not ready to consider that. You've worked with, well, you were an intern during the Obama years. You've worked with Kamala Harris. You've worked with Hillary Clinton. You've seen women in power up close and personal. When a woman is at a high level of power, did you see anything that they did differently or any way that they governed differently than the men that you saw?
You know, I will say it's a double-edged sword. And, you know, you're a woman in power and leadership. You have this incredible show, but it's tougher for women, right? I saw both with working with these most talented, brilliant, passionate women who cared about our country so much. If they smiled too much, it would be, oh, they're not tough enough to lead meetings in the Situation Room, right? If you don't smile enough, you're just cold, stoic, unrelatable. And I'd have so many conversations of no one would say this about men, right? And I'm sure, Joan, you probably deal with this too. It's just women are held to these incredible standards that we have to get to a place where people can keep seeing women in leadership roles. And I think you do a fantastic job. I think more and more we see women run for office, and the more we elect them, that we'll just get to this point that we will see a woman president. But it takes all of us to do the work.
Let's go back to when you were a White House intern. First of all, tell us how that came about.
Oh, wow. It takes over 10 years ago. When I tell you, I never, ever thought I'd work in politics. My parents immigrated to this country, and it's the story of the American dream, which Democrats we so believe in, right? They immigrated to this country, worked hard, and then 20-something years later, their daughter is interning in the Obama White House for the first Black president. But I had never voted. I didn't know how government affected my life day in, day out. I was interning at MSNBC, now MS News, and a producer was like, you should apply for a White House internship. I didn't know politics, but I took the chance and applied, got waitlisted, and I was starting my senior year of college. I was going to intern at Nightly News with Brian Williams at the time, for those who remember. And I got an email saying I've been taken off the wait list and I've got accepted into this internship program. But when I tell you, at that time, too, it felt like to be a White House intern, you had to go to an Ivy League school. You had to know someone who knew the political world, your parents may be donors, but I didn't come from it. And I say this story so often of, I once said Michelle Obama, and another intern goes, you can't say that, you have to say POTUS or FLOTUS. And I go, what does that mean? So I understand when people are like, we don't understand politics. Politics doesn't affect us day in and day out. It was only because I did that internship. I saw what government could do for people and what these public servants, those who work there, those who lead us, really care about country to make our lives better. And it changed my whole life.
I know that you've been named a Pritzker Fellow at the University of Chicago Institute of Politics. And I was looking over some of the seminars that you have been hosting, and one, Finding Your Way into Public Service. Since you sort of fell into it by accident, what do you tell? I would assume that the people you're speaking to, since it is the Institute of Politics, that they already have a sort of a political leaning. Tell me about finding your way into public service.
Yeah, yes. As you know, I fell into, politics and public service, but I tell so often young people or those who are in a career transition, figure out what you're passionate about and what you're good at. I always knew I wanted to help people, and I thought I was going to do that by, going to broadcasting and, tell people stories that I felt weren't heard. But then I got this internship and I saw how government helps people. And I know what I'm good at. I know I'm good at logistics. There's no problem I can't fix, no job too big or too small. And that's how that led me into these roles. So when I'm talking to these incredible University of Chicago students, I really have them think, what issue do they care about? Why do they want to go into this work? Because me and you both know it's not easy and it's not hard. And once they figure out what they're passionate about, I'm like, what are your skill sets, right? Mm-hmm. Are you good at communicating and messaging that you should work in communications? Do you really care about policy and you can figure out ways and policy to make people's lives better? You should work in policy. Do you care about research and reading? Work on the research team. Do you want to just raise money for folks? There's a finance team. So with these students, I really try and help them figure out what their niche is and what they can do. Because as you know, we need young people. We need people to serve. We need people who want to do these jobs to make our country better.
You said that your area of expertise is logistics. What do you mean by that? What would that entail you doing?
Yeah, I don't know how many of your listeners have watched The West Wing, but I used to
actually, I never saw it, so I'm coming from a place of ignorance.
Oh my goodness, you have to go back and watch it. And I would always say my character was Charlie, who was the aide for President Bartlett on this show, and he was a body man. And so I was the body person for Vice President Harris.
Okay, now what does that mean?
Yeah, so let me tell you. So basically, it's what it sounds, a body person. You are the person who's right next to the candidate, the principal, whoever it is, 24/7. Anytime they're giving a speech, you'll see the aide, right before them. I would go and check the teleprompters and make sure the backup binder's there. If we are traveling and they're about to meet with someone, you're ensuring the candidate or principal, whoever it is, has the materials they need. If people need to reach your principal, your boss, you are the gatekeeper, right? They are reaching out to you for a meeting, for ways to reach out to the boss. And you're kind of this nucleus of a person who's just there at all times, ensuring that your boss is prepared and has everything they need to do their job. And I got my start doing something called advance work, which is like what it sounds. You're one step ahead, planning everything before the candidate or principal gets there. So logistics can mean a lot of things, but it's a great way for folks to get involved on campaigns because you need a lot of people on advance teams. And then when there are administrations, you always have a team of people who are going ahead and planning things and thinking through all the logistics.
Okay, I didn't see West Wing, but I did see Veep. So Tony Hale, was he Julia Louis-Dreyfus's body person? Because he was always, when she'd go somewhere and he'd whisper in her ear, she's the wife of so-and-so, and she's got 4 children, as they're walking up.
Yeah, okay, he definitely was. And people will ask me, are you the Tony Hale of it all? I have actually never seen Veep. I tried watching and I was like, it's too close to home.
I heard a lot of political people say just that they didn't want to watch it because it was too realistic.
It truly is. And they've done a fantastic job with it. And it was on one of the state dinners I got to meet Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And it was, we took this photo together just so I could go and tell my friends, like, you guys keep asking me if I'm the Tony Hale. Well, I've got to meet her.
I loved when there was some award she was getting, and Tony Hale went up with her. He was holding her purse. And, she's thanking everybody, and you hear him lean over and say, thank your family, thank your family. And my family, it means so much to me. It was so funny and so amazing. And so that is what your job was. Hey, along those lines, you said you check to make sure like the teleprompter is set up and everything. Twice, Donald Trump has been out and about. I think time was at the UN, one was someplace else. And we'd always heard that he had his own teleprompter people, but twice the teleprompter stopped functioning. would that be the responsibility of the venue, or would that be the responsibility of somebody like you who was the body person?
So I will explain. The White House, actually, when you are president, you have all these incredible people that work under you, and different parts of the White House. And this is specifically called WACA, which is the White House Communications Agency. And it is their responsibility to ensure the teleprompters are there. They ensure the podium gets to where they need to be, and the president and vice president have that. So these incredible members of the military are supporting those kinds of logistics. And as the body person, I would just ensure, is it the accurate speech that's up there? Is it formatted the way it needs to be? And, most candidates have a backup binder if the, podia, somehow
Well, that's the other thing I was going to ask you, because I've seen lots of presidents go off and make speeches, and clearly they have a teleprompter, but they don't necessarily, I worked in television for 20 years, and yes, we worked with teleprompters every day, but I always had the script in front of me, and I always knew where we were in the script, because when you least expect it, the teleprompter goes nutty or shuts down altogether. It doesn't seem to me, when I think back to public speeches I've seen, it doesn't seem like there's a script to back you up.
That's so fascinating, because we always had a backup binder which had the speech just in case something happened to the teleprompter.
Would that be on the podium, though? So how would they know where it was? And one of the problems was, if the teleprompter goes down, not only do you need to have the script, but you need to know where you are in the script, or it doesn't help you.
Yeah, so it's always, and definitely in the Biden-Harris administration, myself and President Biden's body people as well would just go up, ensure we would put their paper version up that's in this binder, and that way, if this teleprompter somehow goes out, the principal can go and just flip a couple of pages and figure out where they are and continue going. All of the people I've been fortunate to work for are great communicators that they can pick up and use that. I will say I have not watched President Trump's speeches because, quite frankly, Joan, it's too much for me, knowing that we could have had incredible women in office. So I try not to. But no, the White House Communication Agency is literally these incredible members of the military. They provide secure voice and data and visual communications to support the president and vice president. And they are amazing. And sometimes prompters go out, but is, responsibility of the staff, the body person, to ensure there is a backup there, right? We have this phrase that I learned from Hillary Land called fail to plan, plan to fail, that you always need to have a plan because things happen.
Yep, they absolutely do. I'm speaking with Opal Vadhan, who is the Pritzker Fellow at the University of Chicago right now. We're going to take a break and be back with more after this.
Alexa, play WCPT.
WCPT from TuneIn.
Opal Vadhan is here. She's a Pritzker Fellow at the University of Chicago Institute of Politics. She's worked with Kamala Harris and Hillary Clinton. Okay, you have to dish. You've got to tell us, Opal, what are they like on a day-to-day basis? So let's start with Hillary. You already said that Hillary warned you that sort of like whatever can go wrong will go wrong, so be ready for it. What else was it like to be with Hillary?
It's so funny, and I will say I was, President Clinton was elected in 92. I was born in 93, and I do not remember Hillary Clinton as First Lady. Yes, she was my senator in New York, but as I mentioned earlier, I was not involved in politics, but I knew of Hillary Clinton, but I didn't know her. And when I started working on her campaign, I did something called the RON on the advance team, which is a remain overnight. And you basically are handling the hotel logistics for your principal. And I would see Secretary Clinton come in at 2 a.m., she would be in Iowa and would, go to New Hampshire and all these, early states and travel around the country. And no matter how late it was or early in the morning it was, she was so incredibly kind. And not just to me, this 22-year-old advanced staffer. I was so young, but to every single person she encountered with. And it's so funny. I would tell my friends I'm working on this campaign, and they'd be like, oh, we hear Hillary Clinton is so mean and she's so tough. How could you work for her? And I would be like, you all know me. I would never work for someone who is mean. Secretary Clinton's nothing but kind and has a big heart, and she is so funny. When I tell you her humor, she's just so funny. And so as we talk about women in leadership, there are so many misconceptions about them that I wish the world knew Secretary Clinton like I do. And even now, we're still close, and she was so supportive when I took the job with VP Harris, and she still checks in on me. So I feel very lucky to have learned, from her, worked with her, and feel grateful to have her in my corner.
A lot of times I've seen this, that women in public office, there have been a number of times with people who are in the Senate or in the Congress where word has come out, oh, she's really difficult, and she yells at her staffers. And I wonder if indeed there are women who are more difficult than the men in those jobs. But, a man takes his staff to task, and he is simply demanding because he wants the best. A woman does it, and she's just being mean. There really does seem to be a huge double standard there.
Yeah, and I don't know. I don't ever remember hearing about men who are too mean, right?
Yeah.
It's constantly about women, and women in all fields, right? It's just so easy to do so.
And I do remember when Bill Clinton was running for office, and, Hillary was a very accomplished lawyer. And there was, as he was campaigning, there was kind of blowback. She doesn't smile enough. She's not nice enough. She's not nurturing enough, because she was talking about what was going on in the world. And it ended up, I kid you not, she had to start baking cookies, and the PR had to focus on Hillary baking cookies because people felt that she was too tough. She was, too unnurturing to be the first lady. I will never forget that.
Isn't that insane? Because you would never say this about a man. And no, only many years later, as I grew up, it was a quote of the outroar of, I suppose I could have stayed home and baked cookies and had teas, but what I decided to do was fulfill my profession, which I entered before my husband was in public life. Nowadays, I would be cheering that on, and look at this woman who has ambition and who's going to have a career. Mm-hmm. But back then she was just, I would say she was above the times. She was a trailblazer even then. And it's fascinating because I had no idea about any of this. She came out with a documentary when I was working for her, Hillary, on Hulu. And even though I was working for her, I watched it, and I was like, I had no idea she was burned in effigy. There are things you just don't realize what these women trailblazers have gone through in our lifetime.
Yeah, absolutely. Tell me a little bit about what Kamala Harris was like when she was away from the microphones and away from the cameras.
Yeah, Vice President Harris and we spent so much time together. I always said I spent more time with her in those 4 years than anyone else in my life. And once again, I go back to these women I worked for. She, there's also this reputation that she's a prosecutor, she's too tough. But working for her, once again, so incredibly kind and brilliant. And she would do whatever it takes to solve the issue, right? And for me, she made me a better person. She made me a better worker. And I was inspired by her every single day. And once again, her being the first Black and South Asian woman vice president, the pressure on her shoulders and what that meant for women and girls everywhere, to see her handle that with grace and courage, I keep saying I feel so grateful and lucky that I've had the honor and privilege to work with these women. And yes, everyone has seen them in such a light, but no, they would ask about my family and my life. And no matter how long the days were, we'd be on Marine 2 together, and, we'd get off, and she'd always say, thank you so much, Opal. Thank you, Opal. And it's something small as that of, I know we're exhausted, she's campaigning or we're doing all these trips and she has so much going on, but constantly gracious. And I say, how lucky are we in our lifetimes to have such incredible role models who have willing to continue to break the glass ceiling.
When did you go to work for Kamala?
I started, my first day was March 1st, 2021. It was the first day of Women's History Month. And I had left Secretary Clinton. I put my out of office on February 28th, 2021. So it was a quick turnaround for sure.
Opal, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me?
Oh yeah. I thought, I'm sorry. I thought I didn't realize that you had stopped. I thought you were in the middle of a sentence. No. Were you part of her retinue when she was running running for president?
No. So I started on the 2016 with Secretary Clinton, loved Secretary Clinton so much that I wanted to stay on and be part of her next chapter, and right place, right time, a lot of luck allowed me to stay with Secretary Clinton and become her executive assistant and trip director, and got to collaborate on this book that her and her daughter Chelsea did, the Book of Gutsy Women. And so I stayed with Secretary Clinton for 5 years. I only left to join Vice President Harris's team at the White House. So I didn't do any of the 2020 campaign cycle, and we had only met each other through Zoom interviews because it was COVID during that time.
Mm. Were you there when Biden had the terrible debate and Kamala Harris moved up to the top of the ticket?
Oh, I was. I will never forget that day. I remember, we were there for the debate. We were in LA, and VP Harris, ended up doing some interviews after that debate. And then when President Biden dropped out, it was one of our days that we weren't on the road. I was so happy to not be traveling. And I just get a call saying, it was public at the time. And I get a call saying, get to the VP's residence. And I did. And, there was my boss on the phone calling everyone she knew. I think she made over 100 calls. And it was showtime in a sense that now she is responsible of trying to beat Donald Trump.
Wow.
And we only had 107 days.
Yeah, really. It was a lightning round kind of campaign. Opal, thanks so much for joining us. Your students at the University of Chicago are very lucky to have someone with your insight and experience instructing them. Thanks so much for sharing your story with us.
Thanks so much, Joan, and thank you to your listeners. And I love seeing women continuing to lead and all that you do. So I so appreciate it.
Well, we appreciate you as well. Opal Vadhan is the Pritzker Fellow at the University of Chicago Institute of Politics.